It's been about 4 days since I've gone on a walk and made a video or just gone out on a walk because the weather was a little stormy. Plus, I've been needing to get some work done. Been trying, you guys. Been trying really hard to make this content better, to make my videos better, to reach more people. I've been doing a lot of work. The thing I was thinking about this morning that I want to talk about is love. Why love of all things? Because I guess I'm a sucker for love. Why? I don't know. I guess it's just maybe I'm a hopeless romantic at heart, and it's kind of neat and cool just to be able to, like, I just like to believe that there is that person out there for each and every single person. It could be a romantic one, or it could also be a platonic one as well too. It's a matter of being able to go out into the world in the first place and I guess have those conversations, which a lot of the times I've kind of postponed them because I didn't want to be hurt or feel a certain way if like things went south. But then I'm starting to realize, and I was watching a video today too around a dude where he's like, there's two types of lives that a man lives. The first one is like his childhood, and then the second one is when like he gets married. And I was like, it's kind of a different way to look at it. I'd never really considered something like that, because I guess I was just always under the impression where it's like, oh, I'll just keep doing this by myself, I'll just keep doing it on my own. Well, at the same time, I'm like, it would be kind of neat to have a woman in my life. It would be, I think, helpful, a little bit advantageous maybe as well too. I think that's the right word. But it would also just be kind of nice to have that person that I could like connect with, I could do other things with, that we could like share experiences with. Well, at the same time, I also enjoy like my alone time. I enjoy doing these things by myself. But then like whenever I watch a movie, like a rom-com or something like that, if I do watch one of those, or like comedy or something like that, and there's that relationship that ends up like coming together, I always like get emotional over that said thing. And whenever a friend helps out another friend, I always get emotional over that said thing as well too. So I'm like, maybe I'm meant to have these relationships in my life. And with me being at the age that I'm at right now, things have kind of changed in a way that I guess I didn't really expect them to. Because when I was in my like early 20s, I didn't really care much or think about like relationship. Like I did date this one woman that was 30, she had 2 kids, I was 21, and we had a good time with one another, and she was fantastic. Like she was the one woman that I wanted to go up and like talk with when I was tripping acid right before COVID ended up happening. When my roommates were like, no, you can't drive. And that just led to a whole different strain of events that brought me back to like my hometown where I was at, which that then led me to go into this new gym during COVID. I ran into these other 2 women as well too. One was a lot more attractive. Okay, let me rephrase that. One seemed to be more attractive because she seemed to be more adventurous and advantageous and like out. She seemed more sexually active, basically. But she had a boyfriend, and she was always telling me, and she'd work out with me, and everybody would ask me too. It's like, oh, are you 2 dating? I was like, no, we aren't. But everybody would always ask those questions, and like I ended up telling like her how I felt one day, and she's like, you know, I have a boyfriend. I was like, yeah, I know, I understand that. It's just my biggest regrets in my life have always been not telling women or friends like how I feel. So I've been getting a lot better at like doing those types of things now, because I realized that maybe that's the reason why some of my relationships kind of falter. But also at the same time, it's like some of the relationships I want them to end, because sometimes the relationships that I have with certain people aren't the best for me, and or they might not be the best for the other person involved. That's just my own little take on that, because sometimes I feel like we keep people in our lives for longer than we need to, when sometimes we just need to like rip that band-aid off and like let them go off to sea or whatever it may be, because maybe you guys have grown apart or whatever it may be. So I was even having a conversation with one of my dad's friends last night, and he was telling me about how he had this business partner that he went into business with. They had known each other for like 30 years, and he basically screwed him over. So it's like, could he have prevented that if he would have seen through his friendship beforehand? It's like, those are things that we'll never know. But I want to go back to the thing that I was just talking about just a moment ago. So like with the women, so when I ended up coming back to this other gym, there's 2 girls. One girl was like, she had the boyfriend, I confessed my feelings to her. The other girl was like really pure, innocent, really nice friend of mine and everything like that too. And there's another guy at the gym that I would talk with, and I'd be like, yeah, this is the type of woman that I wanted, because he was happily married. Like he'd been married for like 30 or 40 years or something like that, and he'd work out with us from time to time. And he'd always tell me, he's like, yeah, this is the perfect woman that, like, you know the woman that you described to me all the time? Yeah, this is her. And it's the second girl that I was telling you about. But like, I just never really had, I guess, that type of attraction to her per se. Like, it's just never like struck my mind. Like, whenever we'd go out and hang out, it wasn't something that was like, oh yeah, I could see us like getting married and things like that. Yeah, whenever we would come together or we'd talk or we'd like just have conversations, like even after the gym, like Henry and I would stand outside for probably a good like 40 minutes or so after we ended up doing a lift, and we'd just talk, like we'd just have a conversation. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I guess I was just worried, and this is something that maybe is wrong with like the self-help movement, is like you always have to think that you have to be perfect, but it's like there is no perfection to be had as a person, because you're always going to be growing and evolving and changing in some way, shape, or form. So it's a matter of taking that leap with the things that you do have and the knowledge that you do have at the present moment, and realizing that you may make some mistakes, and that's perfectly okay, because as you grow and as you evolve, you can, at least this is what I'm realizing, I can start to create and build those with other people. Because I had been ashamed that I wasn't like in a relationship, or that I didn't have like the money or the job or the friends or whatever it was. So I just like left a lot of that behind. But I'm coming to realize now more that you don't have to do what everybody else is telling you. Like everybody online, at least from the videos that I've watched, would be like, oh yeah, if you aren't making this much money, if you aren't working this hard, or if you aren't busting your balls, if you aren't an entrepreneur, if you aren't making videos, or if you aren't doing this or that or whatever it may be, then you're doing things wrong. And I don't see it that way. I see it as you're living your life, you're walking your path, you're doing what is right for you, and nobody will ever know what is right or what isn't wrong. And a lot of the times, the things that get in our own way the most is our own self-judgment. Like it's our own self-judgment of thinking like, oh, this isn't the type of woman that I'm supposed to be with, or this isn't the type of person I'm supposed to have as a friend, or this isn't the type of job that I'm meant to do. It's our own self-judgment. And I realized that because the woman, the second one, is, I guess she didn't seem like she was the type of woman that I wanted to be with, because it's like she wasn't that like the model-esque type of girl that you'd see. And if you notice that too, I say girl compared to woman when I was talking about like the models, because I feel like a lot of the models aren't women, they're girls. It's a small subtle thing that one of my friends actually kind of pointed out to me. But it's just like I don't see a lot of the models being like women that would be able to like bear a child or be like supportive in those types of ways, because they're just out here. And I'm not saying this is the case for all of them, so I very well could be wrong, and I don't think any of them watch my videos, but you know, just in case. But it's just like I don't see them wanting to be the type of person that would like want to have a kid or settle down. It seems like they would just be posting on Instagram like with their ass out in bikinis. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for that, but I'm just like, to raise a child, I wouldn't want that woman to be like the mother of my child. I could not, I don't want that. Like that's not something that I do want. I'd rather have one that's like, I guess a little bit more put together, real, genuine, authentic, hardworking, devoted, compared to like just trying to get likes and things like that on Instagram or social media or whatever it is. And I kind of do that myself right now too, but I'm not really like, I feel like it's different because I'm using my words, I'm talking, I'm not like showing my body. But some of you might have a different take on that. And one of the things that I was talking with this girl during like Christmas over the holidays, and it was just some random girl that I met on the trail, because this one dude had like a mohawk and he had green hair. I complimented on him on his mohawk, and he was like, yeah, like I do this for a living, like this is what I do. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, yeah, I put like Frito-Lays and all this other stuff like in my hair. And I was like, that's sweet. And I was like, is this your niece, your nephew, or whatever it is, or your daughter? It's like, oh no, this is, she's like, oh, this is my uncle. And I was like, okay. I ended up talking with her for a minute, asking her about her social page. I was like, hey, so I'm curious, like, what's the best advice that you could give a dude, like if he was wanting to like take you out on a date? She said something about like what's the best way to slide into your DMs? She's like, well, by not having a boyfriend. I was like, okay, like that's fair. And that's when I asked her, I was like, so what are you posting on like your Instagram page then? And she's like, oh, like all these types of photos and things like that. And she's telling me about how like all these other dudes are like sliding into her DMs all the time. And she's like, oh yeah, my boyfriend likes it. And I was like, dude, there's no way Like if I was your boyfriend and there's just random dudes sliding into your DMs all the time, I'd be like, fuck that, I don't want that. And that was something that first girl, she ended up having as well too. Like it seemed like, and I don't know, since I'm not on like Instagram anymore, but it seemed like she'd always post these like photos and videos, and like she did have one dude that was like seeing her dick pics all the time as well too. So I'm like, that's not something that I'd really want to have to deal with. And I feel like that's a big downfall with social media and dating and relationships nowadays, is there's all these dudes out here just like sliding into the girls' DMs or trying to get like in their pants or something like that, and they aren't actually looking for something real. Where I'm trying to find like a real genuine woman. It's a little bit hard, it's a little bit challenging, but maybe that's my own thing. Maybe it's because I am seeing myself with this certain type of woman, and then when a woman like her comes along but she doesn't look necessarily the way that I had envisioned her looking, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to, I'd rather not. But it's like the relationship and the conversations that her and I have had have been wonderful. So I guess if you're looking for love, or you're looking for some sort of connection, you're looking for some way to share your life with somebody else, I'd say stop the self-judgment. Like let things just happen, shoot your shot, say what you need to say, and if it works out, cool. If not, like no worries. Because even the girl that I was telling you about just a moment ago, I did end up telling her when she ended up coming over to my place, because she ended up like dating this dude that I was also friends with at the time at the gym. Like we would all just like hang out, we had like a little like gym squad basically, and one of them was, they ended up, so basically long story short was, she ended up like getting with this dude and I, we were talking, he was telling me about how he was going to like New Orleans, and how he was like getting like all these girls were like flashing him, and he got some like lucky on some nights and things like that. And I was like, dude, like you're seeing this girl over here that's like absolutely amazing, you're doing this type of shit. And I talked with him about it, and I was like, dude, you gotta tell her like these things. And he's like, oh yeah, well. And I was like, all right. I talked with one of my other friends, and I was like, dude, I don't know what to do in this situation. Like I found out that one of my friends was like cheating on one of my other friends, and he's like, ooh, that's tough. And I was like, yeah, you're telling me, because I've had similar relationships or similar experiences like that happen in the past, and I know the catastrophe and the effect that it can have on one, the woman, and two, the children of that relationship. So I wanted to avoid that at all costs if I could. So I told the dude, I was like, hey man, like you got to take a moment, you can't like you got to let her know what you're doing. And he's like, oh yeah I did. But then when I saw him again, I was like, hey, did you let her know? I was like, I asked her, I was like, hey, did you and so and so talk about this thing? And she's like, yeah, we talked about some things. And I was like, anything important? She's like, yeah, no, I mean, I guess. And like when I would talk with her, it's just like, I was like, see, this is not the way that you would be reacting if she did say something, or if this ended up happening, or whatever it may be. So I talked with him again. I was like, dude, why haven't you told her? He's like, oh, I'll tell her tonight. And he's like, I did that. And I was like, asked her the next day, I was like, hey, did so and so tell you about the thing? Like, did you hear anything? And she's like, no, he just kind of said that like he was wishing me well and whatever it was. And she's like, you're kind of freaking me out a little bit. I was like, yeah, no, that's fair. And then I was like, hey, so I need to tell you something. It's like, apparently he's cheating on you or some shit like that. And she was like, oh shit. And then her and I had the conversation the following day or a couple days later, and she's like, oh no, I appreciate you saying that to me. And then fast forward, the dude was just like sending her dick pics and like sexting her all the time, which I was like, dude, you broke up, like you left it, like let it lie. So she had ended up like filing a restraining order against this guy, which was a little bit crazy to me. But I'm just like, I don't know why dudes like are out in the world that exist like that, where they're just basically pestering women to no end. I just don't understand it. Doesn't really make sense. Like, yes, there's a certain amount of like follow-up and leeway and being persistent, but also don't be like the creepy dude that's just like sending those types of photos all the time. So I'd avoid that. But she ended up coming over to my place when she was wanting to like file the restraining order and get like a police report filed. So I ended up helping her out a couple of times. We went to a police station too. That didn't end up, like they were closed the day that we did. And it was just this long drawn out process, but she did end up coming over and was looking through some photos and videos and things that I didn't want to necessarily look at, but I was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you, because I feel like I was the one that started this in the first place. So we were doing that, we had this conversation. Now I felt like they were both fucking with me for some odd reason, so I ended up freaking out a little bit, which this fair is my own understanding of not knowing my emotions and or my state that I was in. But we ended up talking afterwards, told her about these things that I needed to tell her about. I ended up also being like, yeah, so I kind of wish I would have listened to our other friend back then and basically took his advice and decided to like ask you out and things like that. She's like, oh yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. She's like, but I'm actually seeing somebody now. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's fair. As it ties back to what I was saying a moment ago, like the biggest regrets that I've had is not speaking up, telling the women in my life how I feel. So I wanted to make sure that I told her how I felt. It didn't work out for me in that regard, which is okay. Her and I ended up walking her to her car that night, let her know like if she ever needs anything, just to let me know. And then didn't really ever hear anything from her for a couple of months. I actually don't even know, it might have been even longer than a year, but I also kind of like shut off everybody for about a year because I needed to figure out my own stuff with what I wanted, where I was going. Like I was also just doing a lot of biking, self-reflection, self-introspection, just kind of being by myself for, I believe, like one of the last times that I'll be able to be by myself, which was pretty neat. And I also wanted to explore this different concept. But then fast forward, like I said, to about probably maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 at this point in time, where I ran into her at the gym, and dude, the look in her eyes that I saw was just different. Like it was a look that I hadn't seen before. Like there was just like a twinkling, like, oh hey, I'm grateful, or I'm glad to see you. And I don't know if it was like, didn't, like it kind of did, but it also kind of didn't. Like feel like a romantic one, but also at the same time, like it was like, hey, I'm grateful that I'm getting to see you again. So I don't know, because right now we are kind of, we'll Snapchat back and forth from time to time. Tried calling her on one of my walks, but I'm just like, I don't know what to do, dude. So I'm just taking my shot, shooting it the way that I can, and if something comes of it, cool. If not, so be it. And even if we're just friends, so be it as well too. Because it's like I said, I don't think I really ever had the physical attraction per se to her, but maybe it's because of just who she is and the way that she is. But I like talking with her. I enjoy being around with her. So I don't know, it's interesting, dude. It's interesting.